100, I came across a newspaper, a social media post. What did I read? Professor Stephen Adai, who I recall was very critical of John Dramani Mahama. Today he says that less than 100 days in office, he is the best president since Nkrumah's time. So hope is coming. Ghana is being reset again. The people can see that a good leader is on board and that he will manage and steer the ship of the affairs of state very well. Mr. Speaker, I sat through and listened to my colleagues opposite, and I heard just two things. That the address of the president just constitutes a book of lamentations. And the second thing that I heard them say is that we should compare the figures of 2016 and 2024. In essence, those are the two things that I heard. The day the president delivered the message, I said something I'm sure many people missed it. I said, and I want to repeat, that when you leave your kraal in the care of the hyena, and you travel and you come back, don't be surprised if all the carcasses are missing. And when that happens, you have nothing to do but to lament. MDC handed over Ghana to the NPP for 8 years. 8 years down the line, when we came back, what did we see? A country broken on all fronts. A country broken on all fronts. Mr. Speaker, the president gave us the statistics. But even before the president came here and gave us the statistics, these statistics were known to ordinary Ghanaians before the elections. And my friends opposite have forgotten that they were warned about these statistics and the implications of these statistics on their electoral fortunes before elections. So let me repeat what the Afrobarometer report before elections said about your government. 77% of Ghanaians said that corruption had increased significantly in 2024. This was Afrobarometer, not John Mahama saying. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, analysts put it that we were losing close to $3 billion to corruption, even though we had gone to the IMF for a bailout that was equally $3 billion. So all we needed was not to go to the IMF, but to fix corruption. And that is what Ghanaians voted for in December 2024. Mr. Speaker, even before elections, 71.7% of Ghanaians believed that the president and his officials were corrupt in 2024. This is not John Mahama speaking. It is in the Afrobarometer's report in 2024. 87% of Ghanaians thought the country was headed in the wrong direction in 2024. Was it John Mahama speaking? This was ordinary Ghanaians speaking. And they said at that time that they were also against the e-levy. In 2017, Afrobarometer revealed that only 20% of Ghanaians considered emigrating from Ghana. However, in 2024, 44% of Ghanaians considered leaving Ghana. We were all in this country, and we witnessed long queues. If you drove around any embassy in Ghana, you saw long queues of young Ghanaians, highly talented and educated, who were doing everything they could to leave the country. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, 68.6% of Ghanaians rated the country's economic condition as very, very bad. 50% of Ghanaians were unemployed despite actively searching for work. This was as far back as 2022, and it worsened in 2024. And indeed, 48 Ghanaians were beginning to doubt democracy. They believed that democracy was not working for them. So, Speaker, these are the statistics even before John Dramani Mahama came here to brief us on the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, let's get to the economy. In 2016, when John Dramani Mahama was leaving office, $1 was to 4 Ghana cedis. 2024, $1 to 15 Ghana cedis. Some days it even went beyond that. And the cedi had depreciated by over 250%. Mr. Speaker, these are the statistics. Why would President John Dramani Mahama not lament? If you go and read biblical history and understand what the book of Lamentations is, you will understand the need to lament. The book of Lamentation is a collection of poems lamenting over the destruction of Jerusalem. That is what the book of Lamentation is. So when John Dramani Mahama hands over the country to you, and in 8 years he comes and sees a near total collapse of the Ghanaian state, definitely he has a right to lament. And we will lament. We will lament because the city has collapsed. We will lament because the cocoa sector has collapsed. We will lament because STC, all those state institutions have collapsed. We will lament because the banking sector has collapsed. We will lament because almost every institution, ECG, has collapsed. Every single state institution is registering a negative growth. Every state institution is highly indebted. When you meet a country in such a condition, why won't you lament? Will it not be right to lament? Mr. Speaker, so there is every basis for us to lament. Mr. Speaker, I heard colleagues opposite talk about the size of government. Let's get back to the statistics. Mr. Speaker, at one point, the NPP government had over 125 ministers. Indeed, 126. And it came down to 86. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about presidential staffers. I recall the reports that came to this house of presidential staffers. In 2021, the presidential staffers were 934. The report came to this house. 934. So far, President John Dramani Mahama has appointed only 30 presidential staffers and advisors. 30 presidential staffers and advisors. Mr. Speaker, let's just go down memory lane and recall the budget allocations to Office of Government Machinery. In 2017, Office of Government Machinery took 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. In 2018, 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. In 2019, 2.8 billion Ghana cedis. In 2020, 2.9 billion Ghana cedis. In 2021, 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. In 2022, 2.7 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, last year, 2024, 1.8 billion Ghana cedis. That is your track record when it comes to appointments, to government expenditure on itself. That is how frightening the figures look. But John Dramani Mahama has assured Ghanaians that fiscal prudence is going to guide him. The resources of Ghanaians will be put to better use, and he has started demonstrating it. He has given us a lean government. He has given us a lean presidential staffers number. And just yesterday, he gave us a lean celebration of the independence anniversary. Mr. Speaker, let me say that the debate about the size of government is not simple political rhetoric. It is essential for us to debate it further, beyond the political class, because cutting the number of the political class will save cost. But it goes beyond that. We need to overhaul the entire civil service, the entire public service, the entire institutions of governance. There are many institutions that are just duplicating the functions of others, and the taxpayer is called upon to pay for that. We recruit many people that do nothing. And indeed, we clog the public services and institutions with so many workers that when they struggle to find work to do, we just create additional layers of bureaucracy that make it impossible for the private sector to function. So the debate in terms of the size of government must be broader than just the question of how many ministers of state do we have and how many presidential staffers do we have. It must go beyond that to the issue of decentralization. In the age of communication technology revolutions and improvements in transportation infrastructure, we must rethink how we decentralize. We must rethink what services the government should render and what services are better left for the private sector to render. In education, in health, even in services that are considered as normal governmental services. In many jurisdictions, the private sector is taking up these services, rendering them at cheaper cost and being more efficient in delivering those services. These are the things that John Dramani Mahama is asking us to rethink. And this is the new direction that he is leading this country into. And that was why he said that the Agenda 111, we could have used the 400 million United States dollars to at least deliver 22 functioning hospitals. But all is not lost. The rest of the hospitals, instead of waiting for government to find 1.7 billion United States dollars to complete and furnish them, we are going to consider inviting the private sector to take some of them and complete them. We are going to consider franchising to the private sector or civil society organizations or faith-based organizations. Our faith-based organizations have displayed competence in the area of delivering health services. How about they taking many of these hospitals? Even in education, I was a deputy minister for education, and I saw how even in rural areas, in poor communities, you find poor parents sacrificing to send their children to the private primary school in the community and leave the free government primary school in the community, because they wanted their children to be given a very good start. So parents are already voting with their feet, opting for private services rather than state services. And so this country must engage in a dispassionate debate about how we can balance what services should be rendered by government and what services should be rendered by the private sector. And John Dramani Mahama has promised to lead the way. Mr. Speaker, the President has lamented over the state of infrastructure. We have a $37 billion infrastructure deficit per annum. If this country is going to catch up with its competitors and do well and create jobs, we need to fill that gap. And that is why I say President John Dramani Mahama brings hope, because he has promised a big push in infrastructure by committing to invest $10 billion in infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, that kind of investment will transform our infrastructure and make our nation competitive. We are facing major challenges in the energy sector. Every single morning in this chamber, there is a lineup of MPs asking the Minister for roads. A lineup of MPs asking the Minister for Works and Housing about infrastructure in their constituencies, requesting for water systems in their constituencies. All these are infrastructure gaps that must be filled. And this President has promised to give the sector a big push. Mr. Speaker, the speech was not just about lamentations. The speech outlined a bold, ambitious program to transform this country. In the agricultural sector, where we import over $2 billion of food annually, in a country that is well endowed with arable land of all different vegetations, in a country that has a significant endowment of water and water bodies, in a country where when you even mistakenly drop a grain and come back in a month's time, the grain itself will germinate without any effort. In this country, we manage on an annual basis to import food over $2 billion United States dollars. And yet, I ask, where did all the money for planting for food and jobs go? Where did all the money for free fertilizer go? And today, we are still importing over $2 billion of food into our country. In a country with significant youth unemployment, ready and willing to till the lands and save the $2 billion and distribute it among themselves. Farmers ready and willing to till the soil and save us from the imports of $2 billion and share that money among themselves. And yet, in this country, we import $2 billion worth of food. So President Mahama did not just lament, but he presented to this House a bold initiative, an agriculture for economic transformation agenda, which is going to transform the agricultural sector, create jobs for the youth, produce our own food, cut down on imports, save us from foreign exchange demands that will depreciate the cedi and then increase the rate of the dollar. So it was not just lamentations. Mr. Speaker, you may call it Akoko Nkitikiti, you may call it whatever. But Ghana, with all its potentials, still employs hundreds of millions of dollars worth of poultry into our country. And we have not yet been able to fix that. And he says he will fix it using the grassroots approach, where families are going to be encouraged to get involved in the production of poultry. How is that lamentation? And the youth, the AgriNext program, will give 30,000 youth an opportunity to get involved in agriculture. We will make agriculture fashionable. We will support them, and we will give them jobs. Many leave this country and go to Europe only to end up on farms. Many leave this country and go to America only to end up on farms. That is why we are going to make agriculture attractive, exciting, and, excuse me, sexy, so that young people can participate. And to do this, there's going to be a massive investment in irrigation, and the president also promised farmer service centers in every agricultural district. He gave us a program to unlock Ghana's blue economy, subsidize premixed fuel supply, stop illegal fishing in our waters, and support Ghanaians to fish and construct the infrastructure for fishermen. Mr. Speaker, this is what His Excellency the President presented to us. It wasn't just lamentations. It was an account of how bad our country has become. And then his program for lifting us from where we are and sending us to the promised land. And I believe he will go there. And Professor Stephen Adar has already seen it. He has already proclaimed that the Savior, the Redeemer, the Messiah has come back. And that Ghana will work again. That he will reset Ghana. He will rescue the city. He will arrest the dollar. Unlike those who attempted to arrest the dollar, we couldn't find the dollar. Mr. Speaker, the President gave us a clear program in the transportation and infrastructure sector, where he made commitments to invest in the railway. And he committed to legalize Okada. Mr. Speaker, I am told that the Minister for Transport went to Rwanda to study the workings of Okada. When he arrives, over 300 Okada riders were waiting to receive him at the Kotoka International Airport. Because the Redeemer has come, John Dramani Mahama. Mr. Speaker, more importantly, Mr. Speaker,
honorable members, let's have some order.
More importantly,
honorable members, order. Honorable members, order.
Mr. Speaker, more importantly, where it matters most is a change in our leadership paradigm. That is where it matters most. This country's problem is leadership. Leadership. And that is where President John Dramani Mahama has promised a major paradigm shift. A government that will be inclusive. A government that will promote dialogue. A government that will promote consensus building. Mr. Speaker, even before the budget is brought to this House, he has subjected the national economy to some national dialogue so that consensus can be built around the things that we need to do to transform this country and to do it together.